Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones and welcome to this edition of the program, The Platform. On this program, we examine the national issues of the Bahamas. On many occasions on the platform, we have spoken about the feud at Nygard Key or Sims Point between Peter Nygard and his neighbor Louis Bacon. And from time to time, we've had a number of guests on our show who have spoken to various details of the machinations going on at Nygard Key. You would have heard the name Dan Tuckfield. He is no longer with us now. But he met his death, apparently, at Lyford Key. And today on our program, we are going to be speaking with someone who knew him well. And we are going to hear aspects of conspiracies, perhaps, that took place at Lyford Key. Our guest on the program today is Dwight Forbes, who is a professional painter and who worked with Dan Tuckfield. Mr. Forbes, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sure over the many months you heard about the feud between Peter Nygard and Louis Bacon.
Certainly.
And when you heard about what was going on between them, I'm sure you also thought of this man, Dan Tuckfield. Now, tell us about Dan Tuckfield first before we talk about the feud.
Okay, I met Dan Tuckfield in 97, 98. I was doing some painting down there on the Dingman property, and he needed a painter. And I was referred to Mr. Tuckfield by my foreman then, or my boss then, who's also deceased. What's his name again? Norman Lynch, okay? And he sent me down there to see Mr. Tuckfield, who had some work for me to do, and that's the way I met him.
Dan Tuckfield, his nationality was what?
He's an American.
Okay. And what was he doing at Lyford Key?
He was the caretaker or man in charge of Mr. Bacon's property.
And so he hired you?
He hired me,
And
or contracted me.
He contracted you to do what?
To paint the canal house where he stayed, and shortly after that he took me down to the Point House where Mr. Bacon would stay when he came down, and we had a relationship. It was an ongoing relationship for about 9-10 years.
What kind of a person was he?
Dan? Well, to me he was a nice guy, a little wild, you know, carried his boss's job, you know, took good care of the property.
But when you say he was wild, what do you mean?
Well, he was a partying guy, you know, partied and smoked his little weed and toot a little coke there and drank, you know.
What age bracket was he?
Dan, at that time, could have been no more than 40, late 40s, early 50s.
Okay. Now, I'm sure you heard on the radio and probably watched television about this skirmish, I call it, that is going on between these two neighbors. And why I asked you to come here today is because you knew Dan Tuckfield well before he met his death.
Very well.
Do you know how he died?
To this day, I still don't understand it. No clue.
But tell us what you know.
About the death?
Yeah.
Nothing. All I know, one morning they found him dead, and it was amazed.
Were you working with him at the time?
On and off. At that time, he hadn't too long come back from a stint in New York or someplace, because Mr. Bacon was doing a major construction, and he brought in some other guys to oversee the construction while Dan went to New York, I think, to one of the other properties. Once the construction here was near completed, then Dan came back to resume his responsibilities here at Bacon's property.
Do you know how he died?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You just knew that one day they found him dead.
Strange. Very, very strange.
Do you know where they found him?
Well, it was said that they found him floating in the pool.
Okay.
Don was a very good swimmer.
And they found him in the pool?
To my knowledge.
Now, did he speak to you about the feud between these two neighbors, between Peter Nygaard and Louis Bacon, his boss?
Don spoke to me on many occasions, but not particularly about a feud. Well, yes, because there was a time when he would say, we got to get this, meaning Peter Nygaard, because he would come in the morning and show me like the sun wasn't coming up to the Bacon's beach, or he was accusing Mr. Nygaard of doing something that was stopping the sand from flowing up on the beach. Mm-hmm. And then there was another time I was asked to place big rocks along the way so that if Mr. Nygaard was having a party or something, that no one could park alongside there. You know, several things went down.
So obviously he was instructed to put some things in place to preclude Mr. Nygaard's guests from parking.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you did that?
Yeah, of course I did.
You did it why? Because you were paid?
Well, Don and me, we became tight. We would go partying together, and he would always find work for me to do. I was well paid. Mm-hmm. Okay? So if Don said to me, Dwight, I want you to take this camera and get up in that tree tonight. I think that you'll have something going on, and get as many shots as you could, I would do it.
And you did it?
I did it.
You would take a camera and go in a tree
mm-hmm.
To spy on Peter Nygaard and his guests.
Right. Sometimes I would take the boat. We'd take the little boat, turn the engine down low, and come around to the beach part while they're playing volleyball and having fun. And Don would just tell me, shoot, man. Whatever you get, just bring it back to me.
And you were shooting with what? And what kind of cameras do you use?
I don't know. I just had a little camera, and Don would set it up, and all I had to do was aim and shoot. Get all the pictures I could get.
Did he tell you why he wanted to do it?
No, and I never asked why.
You never asked why?
No. Well, I was being paid.
You were being paid?
Yeah.
You were being paid to put boulders in the way of Mr. Nygaard's
Well, I didn't get paid for putting the boulders here, okay? But I was asked to assist him. So I did, me and a couple of my workers. We came in and made sure that no one could park. But the biggest boulders, I loaded up my truck, put them down.
But didn't you know that if he asked you, for instance, to go in a tree and to take pictures of, and this is during the nighttime mm-hmm. of Peter Nygaard, that you were doing something that perhaps you should not be doing?
Well, looking back now, you know, I know that but back then, you know, just making money. I was on Bacon's property, I wasn't on Nygaard's property, and all I was doing was taking pictures. Now, what they would do with them, I don't know. I didn't even ask.
So you did anything for money then?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Don and me were cool. We hung together. If I had a bad week or he didn't have something for me to do, Friday he would call me up and, Dwight, go to Rosemary and there's a check for you. Well, not check. No, so we were cool like that, mm-hmm. you know.
You felt that you were used then? You were used in this feud between two neighbors?
I didn't feel used. It just didn't dawn on me.
But now you believe that you were?
Well, I was doing something that I should not have been doing, you know, looking back.
You were a pawn in the games that Dan Tuckfield was playing. He was playing a game, obviously, trying to get something on his neighbor, Peter Nygaard, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And you were used as a pawn in the game to get whatever.
I wouldn't say I was used.
Well, they paid you.
No, but I was working then.
All right, so you were working under instructions from Dan Tuckfield.
Right.
All right, to do whatever
Not whatever, not whatever. But most of the things that he asked me to do, they seem innocent to me.
Yeah, but what is innocent about going in a boat and going behind a man's residence, taking pictures of his activities and the activities of his guests? That's innocent?
Yeah.
You think that's innocent?
Yeah, man.
It's innocent for you to climb up in a tree with a camera and take photographs of a person when he has a party going on?
That's how I viewed it.
What do you think Dan expected to find?
Now looking back, anything that he could hold on Nygaard, probably to send to his boss.
Probably to send to his boss. Mm-hmm. Do you know if he ever sent these things to his boss?
Well, I know because one time, well, several times, I had to get the Punch and get the Guardian at that time on my way to Life with Key and bring them, and I would watch Dan go in this room. And now, I couldn't tell you exactly who he sent them to, but I mean, you don't have to be a rocket science. You know, and then sometimes I'm in the garage and I'll overhear him, you know, talking to this boss. You know, so.
And he would be reporting what?
Well, what he read in the papers. I'm sending you this paper, and oh, we had another incident last night. I'm going to send you the photos, and you know. And
Mr. Nygaard had a fire. You know about that, right? Nygaard believes that there was a conspiracy down to his place. You believe that too?
I share that.
You share that?
I share the same view, yeah.
Yeah. You don't know if the place was burned by someone. If there was an arsonist, you wouldn't know who that person was.
No, I wouldn't.
It certainly wasn't you, right?
No, hell no. You don't pay me to do that stuff, man.
you were paid to do other stuff, but not that.
No. Nothing criminal.
But tell me what you believe.
Man, I don't know anything about it, so I don't want to speak to something. I don't want to speculate. I have my own thoughts, you know, but they're just thoughts, okay? I'm not going to speak to something that I definitely have no proof of. Ask me about going out in the boat, taking pictures. I did that. Ask me about climbing the trees. I did that. I put the boulders down. There was one time the parrot, the big parrot, flew in the yard, and I didn't even realize how serious these two were. You know.
Whose parrot was it?
It was Mr. Nygaard's parrot.
Okay.
And I ran out on the long dock and I called the maid, and Don was mad at me saying, "Why didn't you kill it?" I said, "That's the man's bird, man. Hell no, you should have killed that Dwight. Why didn't you call me?" You know. And she came there, put her hand out the pot, landed on her hand, and she took it back.
She took it back. So Dan definitely had a big problem with Peter Nygaard.
Definitely. That I know. That I know.
And you believe that he was being instructed?
Well, Dan don't have any property here in the Bahamas or in Life at Key, not to my knowledge. Okay? So he must have been working on somebody's behalf.
Okay. Well, let's take a break here on the program. There are some other questions I have to ask you, because I believe you are shedding some light on this situation to the public, because the public has heard about this dispute going on at Life at Key between Louis Bacon and Peter Nygaard for many years. And you are the closest person, I believe, who would have seen certain things going on that we really never even heard about. Let's take a break here, and we'll come right back.